Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Chavis. I am the creator at Redressing, which is a Substack about style and self-discovery after body changes. It started out with style and self-discovery after significant weight loss. I've been writing about my journey with obesity. And so that's the health tie into what I do. And my guest today is Melissa Stendahl. She is a doctor. Hi, Janet. Welcome in. Welcome in. Melissa is my guest today. She is a doctor of physical therapy, and she is an innovator on the team at Live Labs, and she specializes in pelvic health. And the connection here is that having experienced obesity, I know I've experienced myself some pelvic health issues. And I feel like part of the confidence that I want to inspire in people, it comes from having good health. And this is an area of health where I think a lot of people are embarrassed to talk about or embarrassed to ask questions. And also, Melissa's on a team that's innovating something really exciting to help people. So I wanted to have her on today to talk about pelvic health and to talk about some of the innovation that's happening. Melissa, is there anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself that I missed?
That was the summary. Doctor of physical therapy. My specialty is pelvic health, and that means I help people with issues affecting poop, pee, sex, prenatal, postpartum, pelvic pain conditions, and that's the gist of it. It's
Awesome.
very interesting job.
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
Miranda, welcome in. It's good to see you. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat too, and we'll try to get to those. And I want to just jump right into it. I think, hello, Isabella. Welcome in. It's good to see you. Um, Melissa, I just want to kind of set some baselines. I think many people are coming to the conversation know some of these things, but I think it's just good just to set some baselines and also get a professional perspective just in case, like, we're not, sometimes patients don't have accurate information. So can you please explain what is the pelvic floor and what does it do for us?
yes. I did forget to pull my model.
Okay.
So
Oh, wait.
I knew there was one more piece of equipment. Okay,
Yeah.
so the pelvic floor, the visual can be really helpful. Sorry about that. Okay.
Oh, no worries.
So the pelvic floor is shown here in red, missing part of it.
Mhm.
Okay. And the pelvic floor muscles are referring to the group of muscles at the base of the body that literally form a floor shape. You can see inside there the deeper layer. And some of the muscles are circular. We know a lot of those that help kind of like cinch things closed for continence. And so when we contract the muscles, which is what the word Kegel means, then that closes the deeper muscles and any of the long muscles. You can see some here, and then that deeper layer, which runs front to back. Those muscles shorten and lift up and provide support against downward pressure. So the pelvic floor has a few main functions: continence or control of bowel and bladder, sexual function, core stability, a support to the pelvic organs, sump pump. They help with fluid management, like in the pelvis, and then also childbirth. So those are key bodily functions. You can imagine how important that is. So when we talk about pelvic health and the pelvic floor muscles, it's regarding the actual function of all of those activities there, that they work properly.
Thanks for that. And then one of the reasons I was really interested in talking with you was because I think when people talk about the disease of obesity and they think about all the related conditions,
Hmm.
mostly people are thinking about heart health or diabetes or
Right.
arthritis, and people really don't talk a lot about how obesity impacts pelvic floor health. And I do want to talk about other conditions and events that impact pelvic floor health. But I think that's something that people don't talk about. So can you talk about how weight impacts pelvic floor health?
Yeah, absolutely. So weight can add weight and pressure around the pelvis, making it harder to basically stay continent. So when you look at the research, stress incontinence, which is leaking when there's increased stress or pressure on the bladder, is really the predominant like issue that's affected with extra weight gain. I'm going to refer to some statistics here to help you understand that too. So being overweight or obese, and that's defined in the literature by BMI. So 25 or greater, but especially over 30, increases the risk of stress incontinence and mixed incontinence, which is kind of like leaking for various reasons. And to some degree, urge incontinence and overactive bladder type symptoms as well, but especially that stress incontinence. And so with every like 5-point increase in BMI, there's a 20 to 70% increase in the risk of leaking. That's kind of a big range. So there's other factors involved too. And the odds of the urinary incontinence incidence of leaking increase over like 5 to 10 years by about 30 to 60% with each 5-unit increase in BMI. Further, if there's a higher BMI kind of in younger years, that is a risk for increased or more severe urinary incontinence symptoms in middle years. So, and what the mechanism is, there's multiple things going on with that. It's not necessarily just a loss of strength that comes with that weight. It's more so about the pressure management and the mechanical function of like sphincter pressure versus bladder pressure. Basically, the sphincter has to be able to keep closed depending on whatever pressure's like coming from above. And so that just becomes harder with more severe weight gain.
And then so uh when people lose weight, does that alleviate that stress incontinence, or is there like long-term damage? I don't want to just say, oh, just lose weight and it'll fix
Sure.
it because like
Right. Right.
but is there permanent damage from having obesity? Or does weight loss
Mhm.
help? And is it just like maybe like the opposite of like losing 5 BMI points might help, or losing a certain percentage of body
Got
weight?
it. Yeah. So good news is there's no evidence of permanent damage. When that demand on the pressure changes, there's an improvement in function. And that weight loss can be via surgical means or non-surgical means. There's really good outcomes for bariatric surgery with reduction in stress incontinence, behavioral as well. But it looks like maintaining like outcomes after surgical weight loss is actually really, really successful. And so, no, there's no permanent damage. There's no evidence of that. Now, some people may have different results. Like if someone regains weight, that might come back up. But also there might be other factors involved, like if there's some kind of musculoskeletal pain, if someone has an injury that's not particularly related to the weight. Certainly childbirth outcomes, like if someone had childbirth injuries, something with the pelvic floor, that can be, maybe happened a long time ago too, and it's kind of some unresolved things. So there are definitely individual factors. And then diet and beverages is actually a big part of it, specifically dietary irritants like carbonated beverages, caffeinated beverages. So there can be significant improvement in incontinence and like urgency issues with some modifications to beverages as well.
Nobody ever told me that.
Yeah.
So is it just
What?
like the caffeine, or the like something in the carbonation, or is it just like
Mhm.
people aren't drinking enough fluid, or a combination of all of that?
It can be a combo, but more so, I was thinking the carbonated beverages and caffeinated beverages. So if you just were to look up bladder irritants, like Google it, you would actually find a list of beverages and other dietary factors that are known irritants to the bladder system, meaning that they're more likely to create urgency, like more frequent or more urgent urgency. And then that is harder to hold in, especially if you already have a problem with leaking. So there, once in a blue moon, there's a case where I work with somebody on what they're drinking and maybe the timing of eating and drinking, and it maybe resolves the issue to their satisfaction. Obviously, if there is a significant amount of body weight contributing to that with that pressure factor, then those two things together might be worth looking into. But that would be from an individualized approach, right? I know for some treatments there can be a protocol, like everyone's going to get the education on dietary factors, and not just for weight loss, but maybe for the irritant part. And then there might be an individual situation where it's like, okay, you drink like 8 fizzy waters a day, and most of them are at lunch. And so the second half of the day is a mess. You know what I'm saying? Like there might be some individual tailoring. But yeah, that can actually be a major part of it. You would ask me kind of prior to this about, if we're going to dive into like Kegels, but I had on that list like dietary factors as one of the things that's absolutely like not an exercise based intervention, but can have a big impact.
Yeah, yeah. I do wanna, like, just touch base on I'd love to, like, talk about Kegels, but I just wanna acknowledge, like, other things that people might be struggling with that negatively impact pelvic floor health.
Mhm.
Like, we've talked about obesity, we've talked about childbearing. What else can impact, pelvic floor health?
So posture and breath mechanics. There's a few more, but I'll go with posture and breath mechanics because that's another one that, in addition to any like weight loss intervention, is something we want to look at. If somebody, and pain might come into play in this case too. Like if someone has chronic back pain or a hip pain on one side, we compensate. We might move differently. We might avoid that side, or simply have like funky posture for that. So that can actually affect our muscular coordination, the strength that we get from the muscle strength we have, and then also the pressure management, again, intra-abdominal, like pelvic pressure. So there are often tweaks we can make to the way someone moves, certainly addressing pain in the lumbar, low back, pelvic region, and breath mechanics, so breathing. So if someone's used to breath holding, when they like get up from a chair or try to exercise, they're really holding breath. Sometimes we see increased pressure or strain, right? That's adding to that pressure again. And we want to eliminate that as a source of that added pressure. And you know, that might be part of the approach for somebody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um I'm curious, like, does the kind of chair matter? Like, does it like, there's
Mhm. Chair or not, so I would say more with standing or exercise. So we
Gotcha.
wanna look really, kind of specifically at posture with exercise if you've got added weight, using resistance bands, things like that, or handling children, if you're a parent and you're lifting children around, you wanna have pretty good technique.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about Kegels because I think that's the first thing, or maybe sometimes the only thing that people hear when it comes to improving pelvic floor health. And I just for to set a baseline. Oh, and Melody has a good question too. Let's do this really quickly before we get into Kegels. She asked
Okay.
is, and also I want to say hello to Nichelle. Nichelle's a friend of mine who's been a health journalist for a while. Thank you for joining, Nichelle. Melody asked, is constipation a result of pelvic floor issues or a cause of pelvic floor issues? That's a good question.
Either. Either, yeah. Thank you for bringing it up. That was on my list of other factors, and then I forgot about it. So yeah, chronic constipation can contribute to other pelvic floor symptoms. Think about it as like constant strain, and also muscle, right? Like if there's times of like really not being able to go and then going, like that can affect the tone of the anal sphincters and the other pelvic floor muscles. So can it lead to some other symptoms? Maybe, but it can also exist or develop from having pelvic floor issues.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So someone who
Mhm.
has like IBS-C then might need to work on pelvic floor health as well.
Yes, absolutely. Constipation is a really common presentation, like pelvic floor for like someone comes to the clinic. Constipation is one of the more common ones. So normalizing bowel function, normalizing muscle tone, and you know pelvic floor, how you poop.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about Kegels. It might be good just to kind of like you kind of referred to what it was, but I think it's just good to have a baseline for someone who's watching who might not be familiar. But explain what they are, and like how helpful are they, and what else can people do?
Sure. So Kegels is just the term for pelvic floor muscle contraction. So with pelvic floor, again, back to this structure here, it's going to include a close and a lift and then relax from that. So close and lift, relax. And Kegels are often prescribed, sometimes specifically, like if someone comes to the clinic, or you might just hear the advice, like do your Kegels, or this must be from weakness. Sure, if somebody's weak, then Kegels might help. Sometimes people aren't aware of what a Kegel is or the sensation of it. You can't see it like moving another body part, you know? So if someone's not doing them correctly or doing them well, they may not get very much benefit from practicing Kegels. Further, if someone has something else, if it's more of a pressure management issue, if it's maybe even a tightness or a pain issue,
Hmm.
sometimes there's tightness without pain, but if there's more of a tight presentation where the muscles aren't relaxing and lengthening out of that tighter state, then we also don't get good function from the muscles. So that's kind of like do Kegels or if there's benefit from Kegels, it's kind of an it depends type of answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that it's frustrating because it like you don't know if you're doing it right, and then
Mhm.
it takes a long time. It feels like it takes a long time to see any results. People. I think there's so many frustrations with doing those. Um, like, how do you address that? And then, are there other exercises or other things that people can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So for addressing that, ideally you actually go to a pelvic health specialist, pelvic
Mhm,
PT in person, and you get actually assessed. We feel the pelvic floor and give feedback as to if someone's doing it correctly, if there is weakness or something else going on,
mhm,
and then can personalize that approach to Kegels for a person. If
mhm,
you don't have access to that, there are biofeedback tools that you can order online. You don't need a prescription for those, but
mhm.
you either wear them internally or there's one you actually sit on, like on a chair, and it helps to measure your pelvic floor muscle action and give you that feedback. Again, some people really don't do so well with those without having had some kind of like, maybe a touch point with a clinician to make sure they're using them correctly. But those are out there. And then with exercise, there are ways we can try to reliably do a better job with our pelvic floor muscles, even if we aren't sure. So one would be exhaling when we exercise, right? Instead of breath holding, let's say you're a squat or just getting up from a chair,
Uh-huh.
exhale on the way up. I like to say like exhale on the effort.
Huh.
So exhale on the way up. We know from muscle studies that for the majority of people, we get a little bit increase in that core muscle response on
Mhm.
the exhale. So you can even try simple things like that, like changing the breath pattern to see if that helps with muscle support, which you may not feel. Again, you may not feel it, but hey, if you don't leak when you stand up, that's a sign you may be getting that little better muscle action.
Got it. So you have been innovating. Now, I'm curious too, like, so this has been your career and your focus,
Mhm.
um, and you're innovating in this space. I'd love to hear like what made you innovate? Like there like most startup groups are like, we need to have a better solution. Like we need to build a better mousetrap, or like,
Right.
there are problems with what people are doing now that we feel like we can address. Like,
Sure.
what are you seeing that you feel like needs improvement?
Well, our one of our co-founders, Carly Price, had this idea based on leaking during running. So it did come from leaking. Yeah. And up to 50 million American women leak, probably more. It's something that's most likely underreported, like most pelvic health conditions, because people just don't realize there's care for it, or they may feel ashamed or unsure about saying something, or they just think it's normal after having a baby or being a certain age or a certain weight. And so there's a massive need for this. This costs billions of dollars, multi-billion-dollar industry, healthcare costs for being overweight and obese, having stress urinary incontinence, and other like pelvic floor symptoms. So there's a huge need for solutions to address that. So Live Lab's mission is to help with pelvic floor fitness, and for all the reasons that our pelvic floor muscles help us.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the device that you're innovating, what you're innovating in this space, and
Yes.
how it works and all of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And so this is actually almost ready to go. We have a live Kickstarter campaign right now where if you want to sign up to be one of the first to receive these, that is available right now. So I have two here. This is called the PIFA, and it is a conforming resistance spring made out of medical grade silicone. So it is completely safe to be worn, and it's designed to interact with the pelvic floor muscles By boosting the muscle contraction, we have found our research up to 35% increased muscle action when worn. And the intent is to wear this during exercise to help with that muscle function. So you can wear it just while you work out. You could also just wear it all day. Like, it's safe to do that. But it's really soft and squishy. Comes with an applicator. I'll load it in here. You guys can see that. And so this little tip goes in, and this helps to, I'm going to catch it so it doesn't fly out, but helps to get it in the right place. And then when you pull the loop to remove, it narrows the shape and just slides out. HIPAA.
And do you have to do like pelvic floor exercises while you wear it, or like you just leave it
Like
there
Kegels,
and
like sitting down and just like doing a Kegel session with it?
uh-huh. Yeah, do you
No,
have
you
to do
can.
that?
You
Uh-huh.
can, but no, there's no exercise prescription with this, at least not from us. You wear it while you work out, whatever your version of working out is. It could be walking, jogging, could be weightlifting, could be Pilates, it could be chores. So
Okay.
you can,
So
yes,
you don't necessarily have to be doing high intensity exercise while you're
no.
wearing it.
No,
And
because our
then
muscles contract all the time. Our pelvic floor muscles are supposed to be responsive to demand, right? Kick in a little, kick in a lot. If we sneeze, we need a quick, forceful pelvic floor muscle contraction. If we're jogging, we need some endurance, so it depends. If we're standing versus sitting, we need more muscle action. Sitting, we have support from the chair or the whatever we're sitting on, and then standing, you're unsupported. So we actually should have more muscle response just even in standing than sitting. So pelvic floor muscles are, responding all the time to what we're doing.
so like this device, is it something that someone could wear just proactively they want to improve their health, or do you have to wait for a diagnosis of something like
No,
urinary or fecal incontinence or sexual health problems?
no, you don't have to wait. In fact, this was actually designed currently and tested in healthy women without a specific diagnosis. We aren't able to treat a diagnosis or a symptom at this time. So you do not have to wait for a diagnosis. No.
And then what kind can I ask? I wonder like what, like for people who are wearing it proactively or just to maintain
Mhm.
health, like what kind of results have you seen? Like, is there a certain amount of improvement that you've seen over a particular period of time? Or like what kinds of benefits do people who don't have issues get
Mhm.
from wearing it?
So right now we have some people who do say that they have just felt more comfortable, confident, and freer to exercise. They're not having any like risk of symptoms or
Uh-huh.
risk of like symptoms from weakness. And we hope to actually study like pre and post in the future. We would love to be able to see if there's a measurable increase in pelvic floor muscle strength after wearing this for a period of time. And certainly maybe in the future also study the direct impact on symptoms.
Very cool.
That would be
Very cool.
definitely for the future. Yeah. And if someone wears this, someone if you try and you have something to report, like something specific, you notice this change, we definitely want to hear about that.
And then this seems like something that's also improving accessibility to care. Like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of
Hmm.
people, either they don't have access to care or they're embarrassed to ask for care. And this seems like a tool that could help people with access to um, pelvic floor health care.
Yes. Yeah, I think that tools like this, we want them to be over the counter and available as a self-care option, like self-help right next to menstrual cups, for example. So
Mhm.
there's a huge need for education for women and really in pelvic health in general for it to be better understood and then to have tools and or strategies that you can do no matter what your access is to an actual provider. And this is safe to do. So yeah, yes, I agree with you. And there is like a need for that.
Awesome. I wish your team well. Like, I number
Thank
one, I feel like it's hard. as hard as women innovators who are working on, femtech solutions to get support, and like sometimes, there are other people in the room who don't understand women's health issues when you're pitching. And so they don't get the
Yeah.
value or they don't see the value. So I applaud you guys for getting this far with it and being so thoughtful about it and approaching it from a crowdfunding perspectives. I think that's just a
Thank you.
really accessible way to get it out there and to get it off the ground. And then just to like it's a great tool. Crowdfunding is a great tool just to spread the word and let people know that there's this solution available.
Thank
I
you.
just want to give an opportunity to everybody who's watching if there's any questions you have about pelvic floor health that I haven't touched on or that we haven't talked about to drop those in the chat. We'll be happy to answer a couple of questions. Hi, Wanda. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining. Um,
So this on the Kickstarter on the rewards, there's like a get it quick option. That's going to be the quickest way to get that shipped if anyone's interested. There are other options and like kits with like different sizes and other services, but there's also like a get it quick one. So that would be towards the end of the summer if you're interested.
awesome. And then so you'll be doing direct to customer initially and then
Yeah.
hope to go retail.
Yes.
Yay. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Melissa, so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It's just been a good moment to talk about these issues that people are. It's hard to talk about. Like, it's hard to talk about obesity. It's hard to talk about pelvic floor health and incontinence and sexual health and what you can do, and just to kind of demystify some of those things a bit. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel like people should know about pelvic floor health?
I think we covered the important things. I mean, without going into like more specific sciencey details, hopefully like some of the information I gave about rates of like obesity, rate, weight loss, and also the implication of like surgical versus behavioral. Do you have any more questions on that or needed to dive into any more on that?
I did
There
have
was a
one.
question about like, is it too late? You had emailed one
Yeah.
about like, is it too late for exercises to be effective? The answer on that is no. No, I
Okay.
mean, it's not too late. Kind of like most things, the sooner you address it, usually the better, the easier to address before something becomes chronic, but not when it comes to the impact of the weight loss. With one exception, I will say age, right? We do have some implications with age, just in general, the way our body work with, it's harder to keep muscle, it's harder to build muscle the older you are. So,
Mhm.
obviously, any intervention, if you can do it a little bit younger, you should maybe have an easier time with some of that muscle and exercise outcomes. But no, it's never too late, especially if it's that pressure factor, removing that. And again, in the research for the weight loss management, that was the biggest impact, even beyond like the behavioral of the other things. So
Yeah. I do
I
think
could
it's
just
important,
emphasize that.
like when you're on a weight loss journey or you're at a high weight, and you're experiencing incontinence, like, it's helpful to know. And Michelle, I see your question, so we'll get to that, but, I think it's helpful when you're at a high weight to know that
Mhm.
there's something you can do while you're on the weight loss journey or, like, while you're, doing the behavior change before you have surgery or maybe, people are
Yes,
taking
absolutely.
GLP-1s. But yeah, like, I think it's helpful to know that you can do something to help make a difference
Yes,
while you're
yeah,
on that journey.
absolutely.
Michelle has a question. Could you give a bit more detail about breathing during exercise to support pelvic stability?
Yes. Okay. So I actually think I want to describe this as a little like thing you can do. I don't know if you're sitting down or what, but if you put like a hand on your chest, hand on your belly, or if you were laying down, one of the things we look at with breath mechanics is how is somebody moving when they breathe? Are they breathing shallow? Are they breathing deeply? Is the breath only getting into the chest? Are people holding their belly tight?
Hmm.
Or they may be predominantly a belly breather and they're actually not getting movement in the rib cage. What we want to see is that all of that moves. Like with nice, deep or regular breathing, we should see the abdomen move. So in other words, the core is not held tight all the time. That's not a good situation.
Mhm.
but also we don't want to see excess bearing down. So if you only see kind of like lots of belly movement, or if you like move to get up and you see the belly like harden and poke out, that's a sign that there's like a lot of pressure pushing on the core, including the pelvic floor.
Huh.
So if you're a belly breather, you might work on just mentally thinking, okay, expand my chest instead, expand my rib cage, or in it, not instead, but in addition to.
Mhm.
So you can kind of do a self assessment on breath, and see, am I holding tight somewhere? What's the distribution looking like? And then further, when you go to exercise, it could be really any, I'm thinking more like sets and reps, right? Like, so resistance training, or up and down it could be body weight resistance training. Inhale to prepare, exhale on the hard part, whatever part that is. It could even be like a row, right?
Mhm.
Inhale, exhale to row. Usually what that does, it helps get that stabilization of the core, the low spine, the pelvis, and offset that pressure a little bit, to be a little bit more effective. Is that helpful?
That is. She has a
Okay.
follow-up question, and
Okay.
then I think I really
Mhm.
appreciated your saying, like, talking about core because you hear so many
Mhm.
trainers say,
Mhm.
tighten your core, and like you're
Yeah.
going through your whole class,
What does
bracing.
that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, you don't
Yes.
know what it means.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
what should trainers and instructors know? That's like a whole other can of worms. There's so much. There are courses, and I'd love to write one for trainers and instructors on pelvic floor, or core, I should say. But trainers and instructors, ideally would be observing someone's breath mechanics while they work out, and also having like a wealth of verbal cues for what tightening the core really means, because everyone's a little different. Someone might brace and bear down and increase like a risk of leaking, for example, instead of tightening the core in the right way. Or they might brace, or tighten, but like breath hold, and then they're also having pressure issues. And it can be hard to see. We can use kind of the abdominal wall as a window into maybe what's going on in the pelvic floor, because the muscles in the deep abs that flatten the abdomen co-contract together with pelvic floor. So there's kind of this like flattening and lifting going on at the same time. And then the relaxed phase is like expanding and relaxing, right? So ideally, like trainers would be aware of that and maybe have more cues to try to get people to do the right thing when we want someone to like tighten the core. Like, what does that mean? But
um,
that could be a really detailed answer.
and what about
Yeah.
during aerobic activity? For example, like if
Hmm.
you're doing like a spin class or you're doing some kind of dance class, like is should there be a similar rhythm to the way that you tighten and relax your core?
That's a little bit different answer. So for something more like jogging or aerobics or spin where there's constant impact or constant exertion, we do not want someone to be doing something special like tightening or hugging in. So again, at first and foremost, I'd be like, all right, make sure you're still breathing throughout the activity. If it's something like jumping jacks where the legs go wide, you can try exhaling when the legs are further apart, right? When that's a little bit harder to like control the core, feel like you're tightened. But beyond that, it might require some training and pelvic floor fitness, outside of that to build up strength, endurance, or coordination, depending on what the person needs.
Do you know of any resources for trainers? Michelle is also a trainer, so I'm asking for her
Oh,
benefit.
okay.
So that's why I'm
Yes,
blindsiding you a bit.
no
But yeah,
problem.
do you know of any
Yeah,
other
I do.
resources?
I'll throw out, look up the name Brianna Battles. She's a trainer who specializes in postpartum, prenatal and postpartum fitness and has an entire course. She's also participated in some of the research on, mostly around like postpartum return to high impact exercise, but that can be applied to really anybody who has a pelvic floor concern or issue. Certainly, after any kind of intervention where you're maybe getting back to exercise for the first time, or being able to maybe do more or do more high intensity. There are other resources. So if that's something you want to be able to list, like I could gather that for you after, but that's the first, like a big one that comes to mind. So reliable resource.
Yeah, if you do, because like after I know this is your debut on Substack,
Mhm.
so afterward, that like Substack will offer the replay and it'll be in a post. And so in
Okay.
that post, we can add like links and resources. So
Sure.
don't feel pressured to do it immediately after if you have other things to do. But if you send those to me, then I'll add them to the post. And then the post will be on both your account and my account. So that way, people can find that list of
Okay.
resources. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so thank you so much. I think we covered some good ground. And I really appreciate your sharing.
Thank
Again,
you.
I think this is a really valuable topic for people, and we don't often have an opportunity to talk about these things. So
Yeah.
thank you,
Yes.
Robert. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining. I'm sorry we're just
So
wrapping up, but we'll get you the replay, Robert. Go ahead.
yeah, I just want to kind of like hopefully help motivate people. Like if I, it's really helpful to think about pelvic floor function in a fitness aspect. A lot of times, if I'm working with someone clinically, like patient, I will still kind of try to relate to them on like, hey, think about this like training another part of the body, right? You can think about it from a fitness mindset, and I think that helps to be relatable, but also maybe take some of the like pressure of a medicalized mindset off of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that so? Is that like is that what it seems like that's the core of the product and kind of the mission of Live Labs
exactly.
is to like
Yeah,
change the way that we think about pelvic floor health from being, like a reactive response to I have a problem, oh, I need to pay attention to this to something that's more proactive. Is that right? And
that that's definitely something that I think needs to change, right? So yes, being proactive, highly recommend being fitness, so pelvic floor fitness, and being empowered to like have ways of addressing that on your own to feel like you understand it and can like try things. That's yes, maybe not being so afraid of the area. A lot of people are like, "What's going on down there?" So yeah, some of that relatability. And Live Labs, we do plan to offer a course for trainers. So that's somewhere in the works. I'll say early stages, but so exactly kind of the questions that were coming up to be able to explain this in a way that can be presented to clients in the gym, so that no matter how much information you have from the person, you may not know exactly what's going on with their pelvic floor. They may say it. Some people work out and they're like, oh, paid and others are not going to say anything, or there's maybe no specific symptom but they have concerns. They're like, oh, I'm going to get pregnant in a couple years. Oh man, I've gained x amount of weight, like I don't know if I can do that. So no matter what you get from your client, you already know the kind of framework with which to consider the pelvic floor as part of training, because it's really not just kegels. That may be helpful for some, but it's really not. And there's so many more aspects that you can look into, like how, again, the pressure management, the positioning, the posture, breath patterns, etc.
this has been excellent. I know we keep like coming to this point of
That's
okay,
okay.
goodbye. But I'm glad that we've been
Mhm.
able to
Okay.
address some follow-up questions. Melissa, again, thank you so much. And we'll make this replay available on our Substack pages for people. Um, and thank you to everyone who's joined us. We really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best and the team at Live Labs all the best with this product that is going to help so many people with an issue that's difficult to talk about. So more power to you. I wish you best in your fundraise.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is amazing to talk about this, and hopefully this just helps a lot of people. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dana, I see you just joined. We're just wrapping up. I'll get you you'll be able to find the replay. Thank you so much, Melissa. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.